So next speaker is Robert Duffy, and I actually met Robert at the first conference I went to in person a few weeks back at KubeCon Los Angeles, and he was speaking about his work at Expedia Group, which is actually, as you'll see here, a whole series of different brands under the Expedia umbrella about re-platforming the entire organization, bunch of different brands, bunch of applications into a single one, and the challenges associated with that. And when I heard his talk, I immediately got his email and I was like, you got to speak at the FinOps Foundation next, because all the concepts he covered around replatforming, particularly this title, How to Create a Movement, Not a Mandate, are very, very applicable to the world in which we live. So, Robert, hope you're on the line there. He is working on integrating this cost awareness process into Expedia, and we would love to hear your story. Also, as a shout out, Rob, you have probably one of the best video setups that I've seen. I actually had to up my game after looking at yours. So thanks for the inspiration. That is not a virtual background he's in front of. That's a great best part.
I think there's a website where you can, it's like a stack share, but you can do your video setup sharing. I have to dig it out again. I'll have to post on that. And then you can
there we go. Welcome. You've got about 10 minutes here to dive in.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and really excited to kind of share a little bit about this story. What's funny about the story that I'll share is we have definitely gone on a FinOps journey at Expedia Group, but we've also gone on a quality journey and a reliability optimization journey, and we've gone on a developer experience journey, and we sort of rolled all these into this transformation and this platformization of Expedia Group. And we didn't follow the FinOps playbook, the crawl, walk, run playbook when we were doing a lot of the FinOps stuff. In fact, I don't think many of the people that were driving that transformation knew about the FinOps Foundation, back to Amy's slides, but we've kind of followed it by, osmosis. If you look back at the sort of the plan that we followed and the roadmap that we took, we've done many of the things that are in the playbook. So it's really exciting to see that be formalized and have an organization that people can look to and not have to reinvent the wheel every time they go through this. So I'm excited to get a little bit more deeply involved in this and help you all think about it. A little bit about Expedia Group, just to set some strategic context. We're one of the largest travel brands. We have a house of brands strategy for travel here. You probably booked on some of these sites. You might not have known that they were owned by Expedia Group. The developer community for us is about 2,000. You can kind of click through. There's a build on this, JR. There's about 5,000 developers or technologists within the company. We run over 200 travel sites in 70 countries. So we have a pretty big footprint in the global travel industry. Around about the end of 2019, Expedia had acquired a lot of companies. We had a lot of independent brands. We've gone all in on the DevOps culture, which I'm sure everyone knows, enables developers to bring their own tools and pick their own setups and pick their own pipelines. And between about 2015 and 2019, there was just a tremendous explosion in open source tools, and containerization had taken over, and people were able to just bring and mix and match a whole bunch of different ways of doing things. And then we had cloud migrations that everyone's experienced here. And the interesting thing at Expedia Group is we had teams that were operating independently. So brands were often operating their own stacks. They were free to make their own technology decisions. And it was a lot of stuff everywhere. If you go to the next slide. What that meant, there's a build on this one again, Joe. What that meant is when you took a step back and you looked at our developer tools or how people were building software, especially in cloud native ways, in any one of the categories, and we had about 140 different capabilities across our developer journey, there were 3 to 5 competing tools. And you can imagine that when you put all the different permutations of all those different competing tools together and the ways that different teams are assembling them, and you add that to the fact that we had a bunch of different business units operating independently, we had hundreds of permutations of pipelines and ways of getting software and ways of running software, and some home-built tools and some cloud-native tools and some open-source tools and some off-the-shelf managed tools. So we had a lot of stuff. I think when we cataloged our applications, we had about 21,000 applications, and that was causing a lot of pain in the developer journey and a lot of comments in our developer survey around onboarding time and switching applications was difficult, and operational visibility was different, and moving from one team to another, or understanding if things were working or not working was really difficult. So we went on this big journey called the Common Developer Toolkit, and the goal of that was getting down to one tool for one job. And if you go to the next slide, our kind of outcomes for that were really focused on the developer. So I think a lot of things like quality and cost optimization and resiliency and finance and FinOps often come as top-down, business drivers or drivers of business value, and they are given to the developers, and it's like, hey, go and improve your costs, or go and improve your quality, or go and improve your resiliency, and not focused on the developer and trying to get them to do the right thing, or trying to enable them to do the right thing, or get them passionate about quality or cost optimization and resiliency, and not thinking about the program, but thinking about the customer. And our target outcomes of this whole activity were really focused on the developer and getting them passionate about doing the things that we wanted them to do, and building the platform in a way that enabled them to do the right thing easily, made it a little bit harder to do the wrong thing, and gave them enough information to make the right decision, and grew that muscle for our developer community. So we had like 3 target outcomes. One was removing all friction in the DevOps journey. Obviously, with stuff everywhere, it's easy to see where the friction and waste was happening in that developer journey. And then provide some exceptional customer service to our engineering team. A lot of platforms treat internal engineers differently to the way that you would treat external customers. You don't have the same level of support. It's okay for a developer to be blocked for 4 days while they're trying to figure stuff out. And we wanted to really flip that on its head and start treating our internal customers, internal developers and partners as customers. And in fact, one of the biggest transformations we went through is just using the word customer with our internal developers, and getting our team familiar with saying customer. And we went through maybe a 3-month period of everyone sitting there and saying, well, what do you mean by customer? You mean external customers? And we're like, no, we mean internal customers. And when you do that, it's actually kind of amazing what happens to the team, and also what happens to your internal customers or internal partner teams that you're working with. When they hear you talk about them as a customer, they kind of change their mindset about that, their reaction to things that you're asking them to do, or things that you're talking to them about. And then finally, providing this cost optimization, quality, and resiliency by default was really our target, and still is our target, and we're getting towards it. Go to the next slide. As a goal and as a vision for my team, I said that we're focused on the developer journey, but really for our team, across all of these different things and across all of the different tools that we own, our main reason for being is to take this time from imagining a change, imagining a different feature on the website, and getting it out to production in a cost-effective, high quality and resilient way, getting that as close to zero as possible. It's obviously a pretty long-term goal. We'll sort of trend towards it, and I don't think we'll ever get to zero. We have a speed of light problem that we have to counter at some point in time, but that's definitely a long-term goal for us, and it will last us a few decades at least. If you look at 2021, how far we've come on this journey, since 2019, we deprecated 149 different tools. That enabled us to free up about 100 developers worth of work who are, supporting the operations and maintenance and care and feeding of those tools. And we achieved about a 20% reduction in our license spend across those tools. We also got down from, we got to about 10,000 applications in our portfolio. We had more than that, believe it or not, and it was spread across a number of different hosting and runtime environments. And then we also implemented this cloud cost governance model, which is going to look awfully familiar to the FinOps Foundation. And we were able to get this part of the process of managing how we were spending on costs and right-sizing our infrastructure, which is a great win for us. Go to the next slide. And then that's enabled us, that platform has kind of enabled us to kind of go through what's next for us, and kind of go through what I think you call the run phase in the FinOps Foundation. And if you just click through the next couple of slides, really Building that foundation has given the confidence for us to embark on our next great platform journey, which is standardizing the runtime environment for 10,000 applications. For those of you familiar with Kubernetes, we have around 600 clusters, and they're managed by about 500 teams. And the platform that we built and the developer experience that we have and the quality and resiliency and cost control that we have by default has enabled us to embark on a huge journey here. I was talking to at the KubeCon talk that JR mentioned. It's probably the largest or one of the largest enterprise Kubernetes migrations going right now. And we couldn't do that unless we had the governance and the confidence and the ability and the trust in our engineers to be able to do the right things from a cost, quality, and resiliency perspective. So and then if you go next. And the last thing we're doing with this is moving our focus on cost left in the developer cycle. I think the traditional model that everyone's pretty familiar with is you build something, you get it running, you put it in production, you put some metrics around it, you monitor it, and then you look at how much was spent and how to right-size things and whether you've wasted money on infrastructure or not. And what we're trying to do is move that left in the process so that we provide a lot of visibility into cost and cost optimizations way before hopefully the code is even checked in. And by doing that, we hope to get a far more savings where the cost of change is lower. It's a lot easier to change your applications when you're developing it, writing the code, than it is after it's shipped and it's out and running in production. So that's all great. That's our little story. But I think what's relevant for you all is how we got there. And this is the sort of, the topic that we're here to talk about. So when you're doing a big transformation like this, and this is my fifth large enterprise replatforming, I sort of stole this quote from von Clausewitz, which is everything is simple in enterprise replatforming, but the simplest thing is difficult. And you have two choices when you're approaching this. Let's go to the next slide. You can either build your enterprise replatforming or your enterprise change based on a mandate, or you can base it on a movement. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how to build a movement. I've done mandates before. I think we've all been involved in those programs and projects where we've driven large enterprise change by mandate. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we created a movement and the steps that we went through to get there. So if you go to the next slide. This is our playbook for enterprise replatforming. I mean, it's really the same regardless of what you're doing. You have to form an amazing team, pick some of your tools, find your allies, win over your detractors, and then execute like crazy. This is what most of us do. When you just focus on these two, picking your tools and executing, which is what a lot of programs do, because we're engineers, these are easy to define things, they're easy to checklist out, right? Like you can get a checklist for picking tools, you can get a checklist for executing. What you end up doing is you kind of trend towards that mandate approach, and you don't build a lot of support and you don't build a lot of movement. And you can get it done if you're lucky, focusing on these two. It'll be tough, it'll be hard, but you can get it done. Where the most successful programs and movements focus on is these three items here: forming this amazing team, finding your allies, and winning over your detractors. And if you do this and you focus on these three areas, what actually ends up happening is you build much more support and grassroots support for your transformation. You multiply the amount of resources. I had Amy there talk about, hey, we might not be able to get more resources, but we've got to leverage the people around us. And really that only comes from building a movement, not driving things through mandates. So let's talk about finding allies and winning over detractors a little bit. So when you're looking at finding allies, the best thing to do is really take a structured approach to listening to your customers and understanding why things are hard, or why they're doing things that you don't want them to do, or doing things that they or not doing things that you want them to do. And that takes a lot of time, right? Like sitting down and listening with customers and spending some time in forums and really doing listening tours or holding office hours or making sure that people feel like you are listening to them is a huge win for your creating allies. The other thing to do is build these forums for involvement. Slack channels are great. Internal meet and greets are great. Actually, a lot of the stuff that the FinOps Foundation or something like the Cloud Native Foundation and open source movements do, right? Like we have days of DevX, we have end user groups that talk about us internally, and it's a great model for you to copy. And then finally, on this, you can find a lot of allies outside your company. For me, allies give you support and they help you with your cause, and things like the FinOps Foundation, partners, different companies, vendors that you work with will provide you a lot of support. And this is good for your mental health. I think when you're running large platformings or replatformings or large enterprise change initiatives, you have a lot of people who are against you or providing a lot of resistance, and that can take its toll. It can be hard work, right? Like sitting through the third meeting of the day where someone's shouting at you because, you know, you've disrupted their roadmap, or they're not able to do something, and you get exhausted. And for me, balancing the number of meetings I have like that with the number of meetings with allies is a real boon for my mental health. And I hope people take that away and think about that too. And my key on finding allies is anytime you help someone do something or a job that they're trying to do, you win a little bit of their heart, and really thinking about enabling people and accelerating people through their job is what I try and convince my team to do. Let's talk about detractors. Detractors are a fact of life when you're running enterprise transformations. There's a lot of them. They're exhausting, and sometimes it's hard to stay objective, stay pragmatic, not solution, not defend, but just listen and just hear what they have to say. And if you can do that and find the strength to do that, and you can teach your team to find the strength to do that, you'll actually spend a lot of time winning over detractors just by listening to them. And it'll be a remarkable transformation, but it does take a lot of effort to train yourself and your team to not like start solutioning or start explaining why this is the right thing. What we do is take any rumors or any comments like, hey, this won't scale, like this isn't going to work, like this we don't see how this is going to help us. We take those and we turn them into tickets and put them in a system, and we commit to tracking them down. And when you do that, what starts off as 100 reasons why something won't work eventually ends up with 3 that matter, and you can chase them down and you get some confidence there. And then lastly, proving your value with metrics is a really great way to win over detractors. And by metrics, I don't just mean the metrics that you're delivering to the business, but I mean the metrics that you're delivering to them. Like, how are you helping that person do their job, or how are you helping remove a pain, and what is the metric that they care about? And if you go to the next slide, the ways that we do that and the ways that we can bring this metric-based approach to the transformations that we lead is we use a tool from human-centered design called journey mapping, where we actually look at a developer and the tasks they have to do, whether it's improving their cloud cost optimization, or whether it's improving their reliability or improving their quality. And we map that journey and we look at all the steps that they take. And we think about how we can remove friction in that process and how we can help them do the job that we're asking them to do. And then once we have that, we identify metrics and we go through those and have dashboards and put monitoring in place, not just for the quality, reliability, and cost purposes, but also for the actual journey of the work and following those engineers through the work. And then lastly, we set pretty aggressive goals on those, and we have team-led initiatives to try and drive down the friction in the system for doing the things that we want the developers to do. And with that, I think I am at time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. I love this idea of like your job is to make the engineers move more quickly. And I think a lot of the most successful FinOps movements I've seen have been more of a developer enablement approach, right? Rather than we are here to tell you to do something differently. So really cool to see that in place. I know you're sort of just starting your cost journey in the organization. So we'd love to get you back, in 6 months or a year to hear how it's gone. But thank you so much.
I'd love to talk about the shift left journey and like show you how we're getting there. So I think it'd be fantastic.